21st Century Entrepreneurship with Martin Piskarik.
I could start with way of thinking that is probably similar to your way of thinking, that no matter how big or small or your specific organization is, you need to always be aware of the potential dangers. Not only from outside, but if I understood you well, insiders can pose when moving to cloud-based platforms, solutions.
Yeah, employees. People think security is an external problem, but the reality is 80-90% of all incidences occur because of human error, which are mostly internal. Understanding what your employees are doing is priority number one in this remote world. Secondly, the way to think about cybersecurity is, and I did listen a little bit to a cybersecurity episode you had in the recent past with the other guests, where you guys talked a lot about, like, the guest was talking about how much money we're spending and we're having more breaches and more, like it's a joke. So he was making fun of the industry in many ways. So I come from, I was a programmer before, but I come from trading bonds on Wall Street. So I used to work at Barclays, Prop Desk, a couple of very prominent hedge funds. So when we think about risk, I don't look at it from a 0 or 1, are you protected or not protected, which is kind of the wrong approach from cybersecurity. Cybersecurity needs to be treated as looking at financial instruments, how you trade equities, bonds, capital markets, how risk is being computed, where yes, in a stable state, this stock will go up, but there are always risks which you need to hedge for. So in terms of having resiliency around your tech stack and your posture, by reducing the amount of exposure when an attack does happen, so you have to assume something will happen, and then what is your exposure when that happens? And our approach around cybersecurity and data security is around reducing that exposure radius. And by making your employees to be responsible data citizens. So one thing which would be outside of my selfish reasons of selling my product or anything, I forget that for a second. I think just for people to understand some very simple things they can do today in their lives and their businesses to make themselves secure. It does not have a lot of like tooling.
I like the responsible data citizens, by the way. That could be the episode headline. Can you immerse a little bit more into that topic before we go to your other topics, such as tips on how to prevent data breaches within remote teams?
Yeah, so what's ended up happening is you used to think of yourself back in the medieval days when you were sitting in a castle with a wall around your city, and then you will basically have these walls higher and higher and multiple layers. You will have guards sitting outside of them when no one can come in, and it was all about defense. But inside these walls, you have an amazing life and kids are playing around and villages and livestock, and people are happy and they're raising farms and all that. This is what pre-cloud enterprise stack looked like for organizations. I would sit in my walls. The only outside link to the world used to be an email. I would send an email out and receive an email, and that's it. As organizations have moved to the cloud, that concept around a walled city has become murky, where walls has a lot of holes in them, gates in them, transactions needs to come in and go. Your employees can go outside, sell some stuff or directly themselves. There's not a middleman in the middle. People from the outside can come in, sell services inside. Think of them as cloud applications or cloud resources. Where you are basically open up that whole concept of a walled city into a mode of interconnected ecosystem where you're just one metropolis center, and a bunch of them other ones are connected to them through trade routes and communication channels, and just kind of inter-exchange of goods and services. So when you think about this migration which has happened to the cloud in a big way, you had the servers, first of all, which moved to large enterprises, and then a lot of entrepreneurs in the advent of AWS, kind of how they took over cloud workflows. So a lot of companies are formed in the last 8 years around that time. And what's happened now is the explosion in the usage is outside of this cloud. Now, rather than using Excel on your desktop, you're going to use Excel online. So everything is moved to cloud third-party software. And what that has opened up is organizations who used to have a lot of control over which files employees can look at, who they get it with. I can even monitor my email going out so I can stop the traffic if there's some sensitive data within them. That control is no longer there for organizations. When people are able to share files as links, multiple people can collaborate, both internal and external. You can have people sending messages to both internal people. So a lot of data is flowing around. These tools have made it very easy for us to over-communicate than what we used to do before. We used to work in a silo and then send an email and okay, we were done. Now constantly we're chatting and then Zooming and this and that. So just the way the work has evolved has made collaboration as a centerpiece of all the cloud applications, but everything is collaborative. And now if you ask any business owner, any manager in organizations, do you know what your employees are doing over these cloud applications? How are they using it? What kind of customer data is being shared on them? There's zero visibility into that. And let alone have any tooling to be able to prevent untoward behavior. So this is kind of where we came in with a solution which seeks to solve that problem by not only getting handle around what is sloshing around in your environments, who's sharing what internally, externally, be able to create some controls to stop those things from happening if you want them to stop from happening. And then more importantly, training your employees to basically be good data citizens, as we are discussing, in terms of if you are sharing a file, having customer data with an external person as a public link for a business which would have maybe not needed to share all this data, maybe that's not the same thing. Maybe I would want to nudge you. So using some behavioral techniques where as you train a dog, if they do something wrong, you train them right away in terms of slap them or whatever needs to happen to, usually the dog will not do it again. The same thing happens in every kind of behavioral techniques around nudging them as the event happens. That's one way for us to be able to achieve higher efficacy on training employees. So rather than having these InfoSec trainings, which are usually quarterly or annually, we want to be in time, in sync with the employees and where they're doing their work and be prompted over there to not do X or not do Y. The end result of all these different dials, all these different nudges and all these different reporting providers, we just want to reduce the amount of sensitive data exposure over these third-party SaaS platforms. So if you do get breached, if a customer does make a mistake and click on the link and someone does get inside your network, the amount of sensitive data is they can take away is less than they would be need to. We're not saying this will prevent things from happening. We're always saying is if it do happen, there'll be a much reduced severity and impact to the organization. Folks can go to our website, www.polymerhq.io. We have multiple ways of people to try out the product and get an understanding of their environment. One is we offer a free risk scan, where with a couple of clicks, or if you don't want to do the clicks yourself, you can set up a call. It takes about 2 minutes to onboard the system into your environment. We go through some security checks, make sure that you're qualified, but typically it's 2 clicks to get started with the platform over Slack, Google Drive, GitHub, some of the more common SaaS platforms, Jira, OneDrive, and so on and so forth. And basically, the platform will send you initially an assessment report within a few hours to tell you these are the risks in your environment. And then if you decide to kind of move forward, this is a free service. So you can call us, we can set it up for a more in-depth risk scan and audit for your environment in terms of these are the employees who are the most risky, these are the risky file shares going on with sensitive data, and give you some sort of historic 3-month history in terms of what has happened to give you some idea of what the risks are. But if you decide to use the product, again, it's a premium version. So for small organizations, they can continue using the free product. They can get trained on them. The product is fairly easy to use. But basically, it's a no-code data loss prevention solution where we can create policies around what is considered to be sensitive for your organizations. Every organization some organizations might be concerned about credit card data, patient data, for example, versus other organizations who might be more concerned about AWS secrets or cloud secrets, and they want to make sure that there's no cloud secrets or customer data sitting over their SaaS Slack channel, for example, or any public Slack channel. Or they want to basically have a sense of if there's any secrets or customer data found in their GitHub environment, it's code basis. So our platform is continuously monitoring in the background and reporting in terms of what are the risks happening. So you can come to our dashboard. We also allow some more analytic reportings over Tableau. We can kind of visualize some very high intent events. The insights we provide is, even if you don't do full remediation via us, is which users have the most amount of PII in their folders. Who are the users who are sharing public files versus restricted files? Who are the riskiest users? We are risk scoring your employees after a few days of going live over your platform. And then if you decide to, you can have a high remediation mode switched on. Typically what that would mean is you can create rules saying, if an employee shares a file having sensitive data, I want that link to expire after 10 days or 20 days or 30 days. I want all the old files which are shared for the last 5-10 years with people I don't even work with anymore. Can I go ahead and delete those links, because that's a data security exposure point for me. I don't need it. I have all this chatter from my employees and my contractors over my Slack environment, which has sensitive data tagged on them. And I want to basically redact those information. So we can actually go in and redact messages in real time or historically. We can even redact PDFs, images, Microsoft files, so on and so forth. In GitHub, we can even stop code basis from being committed. So we have multiple dials for specific platforms, which can then automate a lot of this work. So the one person, IT person, doesn't have to do it. It can be done automatically. And if it's a bigger team, it's even more useful because we don't want them looking at just violations. We want to just highlight the highest risk prescriptive items they need to look at, rather than going through each and every event and go down this list of events, which kind of can become very large over large enterprises.
How did you solve the GDPR issue for those freemium versions?
So typically, for US, it's a hosted solution for free users, but for every paying customer, we essentially are doing just single tenant environment. So it's an enterprise grade installation. So we have a separate install spun up. Most of our customers are in the US. The few who are outside the US have a dedicated server which is housed in an AWS region within Europe or some other place. So we try to stay within the geographic confines since we are fairly deployable. We've done on-prem installs also for very large enterprises, but AWS is the service we use so we can deploy it in multiple regions.
What is your business model? How do you make money?
The business model is obviously we want to kind of show value in terms of how much usage there is. When we thought about usage by amount of data, we realized that it's going to be very confusing to explain to the buyer. So it might be the right answer, but it's not necessarily the answer we went with. We went with a very simple model, which is less accurate but easy to explain from a sales angle, per user per month over the given SaaS platform. So our usage is anywhere between $3 to $5 per user per month. Let's say if you have 100 people in your Slack channel or your Slack system, then you can do 100 times the dollar price times 12 will be the annual cost.
How did you develop the solution? I mean, you are writing about AI and machine learning as well, so that's the part of the solution. If I understood it well, was it a small startup, few of you guys? If you can tell us a short story.
No, so I was after my career at Wall Street, I was running my own consulting business, and I had implemented a GDPR project at Deutsche Bank in the US when GDPR first came in, and I've been part of a lot of data warehouse solutions in the past in terms of data architecture for banks and financial and insurance companies. And this product basically started off as a very simple project, which I was working on the side while doing consulting around providing a map of all your data assets across your enterprise. And that's how it was the V1 of the product. And then COVID hit right around that. And we had a little bit of funding, but not much. So I was self-funding it for the longest time. And then the usage, the feedback from the market was a forcing function to pivot into a more security product because we had the data. So if you have the right analytics, solving a problem, whether it's something around data to analytics, marketing, or information security, all those things are very fungible as long as you have a good foundation around how you're collecting and analyzing the data. Which is a lesson learned, by the way, and I would usually encourage that. And information security was just a mechanism for us to deliver the solution. Obviously, we had to think through in terms of from a buyer journey. Security officers are different buyers than IT directors, and what are the pain points around them, and then how do you fit in with the rest of the ecosystem or information security products out there. So the biggest challenge in terms of from initial development side was it was easy enough for us to say we're going to block the messages from going on your Slack channel at all. But that was kind of what other companies somewhat were trying to do already. We thought that's less interesting because that adds to the friction of how your employees use their native solution. So they're using Google Drive or Bitbucket or Teams, for example. We don't want to be a nuisance in the middle of stopping things from happening. We want it to be a gentle nudge. At the same time, not increase the work of the InfoSec and the compliance and data governance. So that's how it started in terms of thinking through deeply around each and every integration. So we feel that the one lens we do apply to every decision on the roadmap is, does that add friction to the end user, the employee, as well as the information security buyer we are dealing with around managing the risk of this. So the whole thing is around, that's why risk coding and some of the more fully filtered out scriptive remediations or auto remediations which we apply. I think so AI ML for us, a lot of it has been around NLP and around making sure we are accurate in terms of detecting sensitive data. We leverage some open source tools, build some of the models ourselves, And that's a piece which we're completely like constantly doing a bunch of R&D. The rest has been more around pipelining and making sure it's a low throughput, high throughput, low latency solution which does not create delays for the end user.
And in the process, what's your biggest challenge at the moment? Finding new employees, creating a specific project management technique?
So, I mean, we have seed stage companies. So at a seed stage company, I am sometimes I'm doing the janitor's work, and other times I'm literally cleaning up files to do a report on. So you have to wait when you had. I mean, we are a 16 strong company now, full-time 16 employees, definitely the product is kind of where the focus is. That sales, the two main areas I focus on, more so on sales than less on product. And the challenge really is, to be honest, this is an area which is we have seen a riptide happen. So there is a lot of interest coming in, both from the market itself, because the use cases are there, and there are not many solutions solving the problem, especially the way we do it. So it's, but then also for partners, the data context in terms of what we're providing. We are working with some very, very large other security companies in injecting our intelligence into other products. In terms of one customer, for example, is looking at our violations, and then they're looking at some of the login failure attempts and saying, if this guy is downloading a lot of files here on their OneDrive, for example, and there was some failed login attempt which happened, is there some sort of malfeasance going on? Is there a hacker inside? So we have a lot of like kind of top secret projects on the side going on with other vendors to be able to deliver those to the customer. So one of the challenges is around prioritizing. What do you prioritize? What bets do you want to make? It's a small team. Anything you bet might not see results in the next 3 to 6 months. And where do you want to allocate resources? So you can go wide in terms of, do we build a new integration, or do we just go deeper into what we already have? So that's a piece which is obviously all constantly kind of learning and sharpening the pencil on.
Yasir in 5 years, Polymer in 5 years.
Polymer in 5 years, I mean, we want to take it to IPO. I think it's a problem which is with sprawl, multiple billion-dollar companies out there in the marketplace, no doubt, and we want to be one of them. And I want to be, here, if not a CEO, whatever role I made, doesn't matter. Like, I want to continue delivering value. What we've noticed on the ground is 7 to 8% of your employees, and sometimes even less, are responsible for the 80% of risky behavior over SaaS platforms. And you basically are able to train them or nudge them into doing best practices. Immediately, your risk of data exposure in your environments go down by literally like 60% within 2 weeks. And quantitatively, we can show you in terms of how that's happening. And that is one of the reasons why nudging and triangulating the information security training with any cybersecurity solution needs to be there, and we have built it to our platform to be able to do that. In terms of the other component around risk, when you think about it, another way to explain is the following. I can be an owner in, let's say, the stock of Microsoft, and I feel that Microsoft will be at a very high level, double from where it is right now in 5 years' time. I buy the stock, but then at the end of the day, I need to kind of mark the position based on where the stock price is. So I need to kind of mark to market my position every day. If I'm a hedge fund where I need to report to my investors my risk every day, I basically do a hedge. I buy Microsoft and sell Facebook to say, okay, even if both go down, Microsoft will go down less. Both go up, Microsoft will go up higher in the next 5 years. So that's kind of a simple hedging strategy or risk mitigation strategy, which happen to reduce your overall exposure to the market. When you think about risk mitigation for a data loss prevention software like ours, one heuristic I can give you to explain that concept, which for some people are prosaic, is if I have a file which has sitting out there in a folder shared as a public link. I shared it with one individual. I shared it with you, for example, Martin, and you basically took that file and shared it with 100 other people. And as a company, the original file was shared with one person. So suddenly the exposure is much, much higher from this file getting into the wrong hands. You might say that file might not contain anything sensitive, but it might. And that's a piece where for us to go in, the machine to go in and automatically downgrade that link to say, okay, it needs to be restricted, or close off that link after 30 days. So a couple of years from now, the 100 people who have access to this file cannot access it, or if they get breached, they don't have access, the breacher does not have access to this file. So certainly what you've done is you risk mitigate that even the event or something happening, the exposure is less of your data. So the risk exposure piece is a core construct of how Polymer thinks about making the organization more resilient. So it's all about resiliency. You cannot protect yourself 100% for any attack, any exposure. Things will happen. But we want to minimize the exposure, and that has real dollar consequences also. You have cyber insurance, for example. Sometimes get tied to in terms of how much the data was exposed. Some of the government and regulatory fines is dependent on how much customer data was exposed. And if you're able to demonstrate that only a limited amount was, your fine will be much less. And then what you need to report to your customers who are affected by it. And that's a big component of it, where in the example of the Uber CISO, who has been recently found guilty, and we don't have to get into who's right, who's wrong with that. The fact that the main argument by the jury they decided on was it was not reported out to the relevant authorities that there was a breach that occurred, and the extent of it. In most of the cases, if a breach has happened, the extent of it is something unknown because companies themselves don't know how much data, what was there. So having a handle on all those things is super important to building a resilient organization around just best practices and building data citizens. Go to our website, www.polymerhq.io, or you can email me at yali@polymerhq.io also. Learn about a company. If you have any questions or try the product out for free, go for it. Or someone can contact you to set up a more custom call and understand your needs and see if we can help. Or at least guide you on best practices for data governance. We do that. We are a very consultative company, so happy to help out where we can.
21st Century Entrepreneurship with Martin Piskarik.